Hey guys, a few of you told me that you really enjoyed when I read to you last week. Was that last week? No, that was Monday. This has been a long week and it's only Tuesday. Well, Wednesday for you, Tuesday for me. Um, so, anyway, when I read to you on Monday, you really enjoyed it, and so I decided that I would do it again just because I know it's a hard book. They talk weird, and it's just, there's a lot to understand, a lot going on. So, if you would like to listen, you're more than welcome to follow along as we read. If you prefer to read on your own, that's perfectly fine. We are starting chapter 10 today. Only 3 chapters left, so things are going to pick up really quickly here. So we're starting chapter 10 today, and if you are reading in the physical book, we are going to stop at the very top of page 227. If you are reading online, then you are going to stop where it says August Dawn Blue and Hot. So where it says August Dawn Blue and Hot, that will be your spot to stop. And then we will read that on Friday. All right, so we are ready for chapter 10. The last chapter we read, Papa and Stacy and Mr. Morrison had gone to get supplies in Vicksburg. They got... and it wasn't really an accident. Their back wheels had fallen off, and they were trying to fix that. And then the Wallaces came up and shot Papa in the side of the head, but it only grazed him. It didn't go in him. And then as the whole commotion was going on, Papa's leg got run over by the wagon. So Mr. Morrison beat them up. He broke one of their arms. He might have broken one of their backs. We're not sure yet. Stacy said he thought that they did. And so they had just gotten home, and Stacy kind of told the whole story where chapter 9 had ended. So we are going to pick up where that left off. So chapter 10. How does it look? Asked Papa as I passed through the sitting room on my way out the side door. Over a week had passed since he had been injured, and this was his first morning up. He was seated by the cold fireplace, and his head still bandaged, his broken leg resting on a wooden chair. His eyes were on Mama as at her desk. Mama put her pencil down and frowned at the open ledger before her. She glanced at me absently and waited until I closed the screen door behind me. Then she said, David, do you think we should go into this now? You're still not well. I'm well enough to know there's not much left. Now tell me. I hopped down the steps and sat on the bottom one. Mom was silent a moment before she answered him. With Hammer's half of the mortgage money, we got enough to meet the June payment. Nothing more? Couple $100, but that's all. They were both silent. You think we should write Hammer and borrow some money? Mama asked. Papa did not answer right away. No, he said finally. I don't want him to know about this thing. If he knows I'm not on the railroad, he'll want to know why I'm not, and I don't want to risk that temper of his when he finds out what the Wallaces had done. Remember, Uncle Hammer has a really hot temper. He about went and beat up the person that had made Cassie just apologize. So if you can imagine if he wanted to beat up someone who just made her apologize, how he would feel if somebody had shot his brother. So Papa and Mama don't want to tell him that they need money for their half of the mortgage. Remember, they still owe on half of their land. Half of it is theirs, and the other half they still owe every month to the bank. Well, I guess every month to the bank. And they're worried, since Papa's not working right now, that they're not going to have enough money. Mama sighed. I guess you're right. I know I am, said Papa. Things like they are, he come down here wild and angry. He'll get himself hung. Long as things don't get no worse, we can make it without him. We'll see that June note with the money we got there. He paused a moment. We'll probably have to sell a couple of cows and their calves to make July and August notes. Note is a different term for payment. Maybe even that old sow. But by the end of August, we should have enough cotton to make that September payment. Of course, we'll probably have to go all the way to Vicksburg to get it gained. Can't hardly use Harlan Granger's gin this year. No, to get it gin, sorry. Which means kind of getting their cotton processed. There was silence again. Then Mama said, David, Mama's been talking about going into Strawberry to the market next. No, Papa said, not letting her finish. Too much bad feeling there. I told her that. I'll talk to her. Anything we just got to have before the first cotton come in? Well, you picked up batteries and kerosene on that last trip. But we're going to need more than anything is some insecticide to spray the cotton. The bugs are getting pretty bad. What about food? Our flour and sugar and baking powder and such are low, but we'll make out. We don't have to have biscuits and cornbread every day. We're out of pepper and there's not much salt, but we don't have to have those either. And the coffee's all gone. The garden's coming along nicely, though. There's no worry there. No worry, Papa muttered as they both grew quiet. Then suddenly there was a sharp explosion as if something had been struck with an angry force. If only this leg wasn't busted. Sorry, guys. If only this leg wasn't busted. Don't let Stacy hear you saying that, David, Mama cautioned softly. You know he blames himself about your leg. I told the boy it wasn't his fault. He's just wasn't strong enough to hold Jack. I know that, but he still blames himself. Papa laughed strangely. Ain't this something? Then Wallison's aim a gun at my head and I get my leg broke, and the boy's blaming himself for it. Why, I feel they're taking a bullwhip to all three of 'em, them Wallaces, and not stop until my arm gets so tired I can't raise it one more time. You're sounding like Hammer. I am? Well, a lot of times I feel like doing things Hammer's way. I think I'd get a powerful lot of satisfaction from whipping Caleb Wallace and them brothers of his. Hammer's way could get you killed, and you know it, so stop talking like that. Don't we already have enough to worry about? Besides, both Thurston and Dewberry Wallace are still laid up, so I hear. Some folks say that Dewberry's back is broken. In any case, Mr. Morrison might have hurt them pretty bad. Where is he, by the way? I haven't seen him this morning. There was an instant of silence before Mama answered. Out looking for work since dawn. He ain't gonna find nothing round here. I told him that. I know, agreed Mama, but he says he's got to try. David, Mama stopped, and then she spoke again. Her voice had grown faint, as if she hesitated to say what was on her mind. David, don't you think he ought to go? I don't want him to, but after what he did to the Wallaces, I'm afraid for him. He knows what could happen, Mary, but he wants to stay, and frankly, we need him here. Don't pester him about it. But David, if... Before Mama finished, I spied Mr. Morrison coming west from Smelling's Creek. I left the step and hurried to meet him. Hello, Mr. Morrison, I shouted as Jack pulled the wagon up the drive. Hello, Cassie, Mr. Morrison greeted me. Your papa awake? Yes, sir. He's sitting out of bed this morning. Didn't I tell you nothing could keep him down? Yes, sir, you did. He stepped from the wagon and walked towards the house. Mr. Morrison, you want me to unhitch Jack for you? No, Cassie, leave him be. I gotta talk to your papa, then I'll be back. Hey, old Jack, I said, patting the mule as I watched Mr. Morrison enter the side door. I thought of returning to my seat on the steps, but I decided against it. Instead, I remained with Jack, thoughtfully digesting all that I had heard, until Mr. Morrison came from the house. He went into the barn, then reappeared with the planter, a plow-like tool with a small container for dropping seeds attached to the middle. He put to the planter in the back of the wagon. Where are you going now, Mr. Morrison? Down to Mr. Wiggins' place. I seen Mr. Wiggins this morning. He asked to use your papa's planter. He ain't got no wagon, so I told him I'd ask your papa, and if it was all right, I'd bring it to him. Ain't it kind of late for seeding? Well, not for what he got in mind. He thought he'd plant himself some summer corn. It'll be ready come September. Mr. Morrison, can I go with you? I asked as he climbed up the wagon. Well, I'd be right pleased for your company, Cassie, but you'll have to ask your mama. I ran back to the house. The boys were now in Mama and Papa's room, and when I asked if I could go up to Little Willie's with Mr. Morrison, Little Man and Christopher John, of course, wanted to go too. Mr. Morrison said, It'll be all right, Mama. Well, don't you get in his way. Stacy, you going? Stacy sat across from Papa, looking despondently at the broken leg. Go on, son, said Papa gently. There's nothing you can do here. Give you a chance to talk to Little Willie. Sure there ain't something I can do for you, Papa? Just go and have yourself a good ride over to Little Willie's. Since it had been my idea to ask to go, I climbed the seat beside Mr. Morrison, and the boys climbed in back. Little Willie's family lived in their own 40 acres about 2 miles east of Great Faith. It was a fine morning for a ride, and 6 miles there sped by quickly with Mr. Morrison singing in his basest of bass voices, and Christopher John, little man, and me joining in whenever we could as we passed cotton fields abloom and flowers of white and red and pink. Stacy, being in one of his moods, did not sing, and we let him be. We stayed less than an hour at the Wiggins farm and then headed home. We had just passed Great Faith and were approaching the Jefferson Davis School Road when a ragged pickup came into view. Very quietly, Mr. Morrison said, "Cassie, getting back." "But why, Mr. "Do quick, Cassie, like I say." His voice was barely above a friendly whisper, but there was an urgency in it, and I obeyed, scrambling over the seat to join the boys. "Y'all stay down now." The truck braked noisily with a grating shriek of steel. We stopped. The boys and I peeped over the edge of the wagon. The truck had veered across the road, blocking us. The truck door swang open, and Caleb Wallace stepped out, pointing a long, condemning finger at Mr. Morrison. He swayed unspeaking for a long, terrible moment, then sputtered, "You big black N-word, I ought to cut your heart out for what you done. My brother's laid up like they is, and you still running around free as a white man. Downright sinful is what it is. Why, I ought to gun you down right here where you sit." "You gonna move your truck?" Caleb Wallace gazed up at Mr. Morrison, then at the truck as if trying to comprehend the connection between the two. "That truck in your way, boy? You gonna move it?" "I'll move it all right, when I get good and ready." He stopped abruptly, his eyes bulging in a terrified stare as Mr. Morrison climbed down from the wagon. Mr. Morrison's long shadow fell over him, and for a breathless second Mr. Morrison towered dangerously near him. But as the fear grew white on Caleb Wallace's face, Mr. Morrison turned without a word and peered into the truck. "What's he looking for?" I whispered. "Probably a gun," said Stacy. Mr. Morrison circled the truck, studying it closely. Then he returned to its front, and bending his knees with his back against the grill, he positioned his large hands beneath the bumper. Slowly, his muscles flexing tightly against his thin shirt and sweat popping off his skin like oil on water, he lifted the truck in one fluid, powerful motion until the front was several inches off the ground, and slowly walked it to the left of the road, where he set it down as gently as a sleeping child. Then he moved to the rear of the truck and repeated the feat. Mr. Morrison literally just lifted the truck and moved it onto the side of the road. Caleb Wallace was mute. Christopher John, little man, and I sat open-mouthed, and even Stacy, who had witnessed Mr. Morrison's phenomenal strength before, gazed in wonder. It took Caleb Wallace several minutes to regain his voice. We were far down the road, almost out of hearing, when his frenzied cry of hate reached us. "One of these nights, you watch, N-word. I'm going to come and get you for what you done. You watch. One night, real soon." When we reached home and told Mama and Papa and Big Ma what had happened, Mama had said to Mr. Morrison, "I told you before I was afraid for you, and today Caleb Wallace could hurt you and the children." Mr. Morrison looked squarely into Mama's eyes. "Ms. Logan, Caleb Wallace is one of them folks who can't do nothing by himself. He's got to have a lot of other folks backing him up, plus a loaded gun. And I knew there wasn't no gun. Leastways, not in the truck." I checked. "But if you stay, he'll get somebody, and they'll have to try and take you, like he said." "Ms. Logan, don't ask me to go." Mama reached out, laying a slender hand on Mr. Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, you're part of us now. We don't want you hurt because of us." Mr. Morrison lowered his eyes and looked around the room until his gaze rested on the boys and me. "I ain't never had no children of my own. I think sometimes if I had, I would have wanted a son and a daughter just like you and Mr. Logan. And grandbabies like these babies of yours. But Mr. Morrison, the Wallaces—" "Mary," said Papa quietly, "let it be." Mama looked at Papa, her lips still poised to speak. Then she said no more, but the worry lines remained creased upon her brow. So, Mr. Morrison once again sticks up to the Wallaces. He didn't beat them up this time, but he clearly disobeyed what they were wanting him to do by moving the truck and not participating in some back and forth argument that the Wallaces were wanting to get into. And he doesn't look like he's leaving town, so this looks like it might cause a lot of trouble for him and for the Logan family. So we'll just have to find out what's going to happen. That's it for today. I hope you guys have a great day. Make sure you do the Quizlet below. It shouldn't take you very long. Try it as many times as you would like. Whatever score you get is going to be the score that you get for today's grade. So go till you get 10 out of 10 if you want. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.